Welcome to the 29th Wells Festival of Literature, our second live streamed. This festival in Somerset is run entirely by volunteers, and all profits go towards helping support educational projects in local schools and colleges. We hope you enjoy this event.
Ready to start, apparently. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to this session of the Wells Festival of Literature. We're delighted to see a live audience here. Stalwarts, obviously, not thousands of you, but enough. We also welcome our audience all over the world by live video. COVID having retreated, we're able to welcome today a number of our young poets and and other writers for the other sessions here in person. So that's wonderful to see. Some will be reading their poems by video, and they will come on to the screen there as we go through. And then for those for whom there is no poet actually able to read, our team of readers, Pamela and Neil and Jenny, will read those poems. Because of our schedule is fairly tight for the whole of the afternoon, would you please not applaud after each poem, but just at the end of the readings generally. Our competitions are continuing to flourish, I'm glad to say. The open poetry had over 800 entries this year, and the young poets over 100, the short stories over 400, and the books for children 150. And the entries are truly international, with over 240 entries from abroad outside the UK. Over 50 from Ireland, 35 from Australia, 20 from America, and 10 each or more from India, Canada, France, Spain, and Poland. In total, as I say, 38 countries are represented, and all of them are most welcome. So just briefly to the order of events. First, we'll read the shortlisted poems of the young poets. And then our judge, Phoebus Stoop, will come and speak and comment on the work submitted and give the prizes. And after that, we'll have a short break, sometime about 3 o'clock-ish, for a few minutes before we return to hear the open poetry readings and have the prizes for that. So, without more ado, and with our thanks to Ladies Mendip Group and for sponsoring this competition, and to the Poetry Society, who give a prize to all our winners of a membership of the Poetry Society for a year, we can start. We'll read the poems in the order that they appear in the booklet, and I hope you've all got the blue booklet so that you can follow that if you wish to. We won't introduce each one, so when the first one has finished, then the second one will be read, and if you're here in person and are reading, when it's your turn in the booklet, come up and stand right here where I am and read from there. So, the first one is by Iona Barry.
Okay, hello, I'm Iona, and I'm going to read my poem, A Moment's Repose. Sorry, here we go. Suspended under filtering sunlight, dapples caressing the glass, I am contained within. Speckled rays soak into the concrete, porous. Beginnings of soft sound rising, shimmering over the rooftops of buildings, a cascade bursting, vibrancy cast, lifting the dullness from my surroundings, the tired people, grey rectangles, abandoned. Warmth seeping through, a sanctuary emerges. It's worth staying here, in this place. My resolve echoes, to chase that spark found on the surface. I chase that spark. Clamour of the crowds, distant hum of the electricity lines, clatter of the railway, smoky wafts from the food stand grill, pastoral undulations, hills on the horizon. Hazy passers-by, their movements flitting near the corner of my eyes. The light shifts, an icy chill hits once again. Gentle noise fades, the crescendo over for now, scattered, released into the air around me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm from Singapore, and this is my poem, After the Fall, inspired by the Greek myth of Icarus and his father, Daedalus. After the fall, or Daedalus thinks of Icarus. For months after, drenched shadows flit before your crimson eyes. Memory flickers on the synapse of your consciousness. Sleep slips from your grasp like a dove from an eagle's talons. You recall how his eyes shone brighter than any sun when he skived through the air as if sculpted for the skies. When he reached out a trembling hand, a moth drawn to a flame, you saw a god. A father too entranced by the sight of divinity to sense danger until it was too late. The chasm in your ribcage devours all you have to give and more. Behold, the only labyrinth you cannot escape is that of your own making. Slowly, you learn the cartography of loss. Chart your way through weeping oceans, but never quite find your way home. Thank you.
Read number 3 at the Fraternity Fashion Show performed by Year 10 by Natalie Perman. Holes made of leather slipped through knee guards and neon green legs. You streaked in a River Island chest glistening stone blue against graphic tees that spilled the secrets to happy living. The night before the fashion show, you drank orange pulp and spent the evening rocking like a ship, heavy and heaving. You had a crush on the fashion MC. You mimicked piercing through the puppy mole on his right cheek with the hammer of 2 fingers as he introduced the fashion statements of a leash of 15-year-olds wearing white sheen silk, practicing innuendo on the words backstage practice, around a mouth of mint gum and teenage sickness. After the lead pairs, you tipped your head onto my shoulder and leant into another moment of testing law against emotion, against damp skin, cellulite, custard pots and fruit coolers, against growing in any way towards sterilized adults, their hospital smell and their balsam tissues and electric LED incandescence. You avoided this by splitting fat from your wisdom tooth like a fishbone, by touching a boy who was sour and ashy, by watching celebrities carry trophies of polyester tutus with girls buried underneath them. You danced on all fours, long and light red like a pinprick. You avoided this by calling me your girlfriend at the fashion show. You thought it hysterical, like when we swapped glasses and everything was tiny and made of glass. At the fashion show, the rugby boys had just begun to pretend to kiss each other, jolting in the air in front of a crowd of sweating parents, a school sponsored by acts of almost homosexuality, like any teenage sporting team, like any teenage sport, like any teenager, like any small to medium-sized city in any England. And I'll read number 4, Chair of Stories by Keeble. The armchair where my mother would sit is where she told me many a story. I'd sit on the floor, utterly enthralled amidst old tales of battles and glory. My grandmother travelled through centuries and took me by hand to see everything, to learn of the secrets never spoken and the knowledge that bards refused to sing. I had many a favourite growing up. Best were the stories where I saved the world with the power of love and life and joy. Like when I travelled the seas, sails unfurled, to find giants who were forgotten so long ago. No one wondered how they fared. They who weren't evil or dangerous, but victims of a system that never cared. Or when I managed to dine with the Queen, we discussed issues in variety. No one remains sad in Grandmother's tales. She speaks of a perfect society. Don't look with your eyes, Grandmother told me, whilst I sat silent beside her armchair. You'll never find a good story through sight, and the tales of a closed heart go nowhere. For stories only come to life with love. My dear, only to heart do tales unfold. Let your heart discover the universe, and it will find that which needs to be told. So here I sit, on Grandmother's armchair. My eyes are closed, but my heart is open. And all my tales are of a great woman whose chair of stories remains unbroken.
This poem's called Daughter. When you're in the bath, write poetry and carve it into the ceramic so your landlord can hear your heartbeat. Scrape at the tiles with your teeth until next door come knocking, then slit your wrists and disappear down the plug hole. Leave the world wondering how you sawed yourself in half, then vanished before they were done getting drunk on your screams. The mascara that makes boys call you pretty was worn by a rabbit first. Always keep coat hangers from shops. You never know when you'll need them. And everyone knows a girl who woke up one morning with a big black spot where last night should have been, and no knickers. What I mean to tell you, daughter, is this. If a boy offers you a cigarette in the back of a club, steal his lighter, crack it into and lick that liquid fire into your mouth while he watches. Then tell him to kiss you. And if he sets you alight and you both burn from the inside until you take down the building with you, then marry him. And if not, remind him where the tales of dragons come from.
Hello everyone, my name is Diasa Morgan and I am absolutely honoured to be able to do a reading for you all of my poem, despite the fact that I can't be with you in person. My poem is entitled Digestion. Chewing my own heart was a feat in itself. Spitting it back out was another. Ladies don't spit. My mother taught me that. She also taught me that I am not a lady. So I swallowed it. My stomach rolls and roils in protest, in agony, or perhaps a battle cry. a song of victory. Tar and ichor run over the tiles, over my teeth, my throat, my tongue. I stick. Yet, I would rather digest myself than have you try to take a bite out of me.
Hi, I'm Jayant Kashyap and I'm going to read my poem Earth Fire. I wrote this poem after Yvonne Reddick's poem Translating Mountains from the Gallic, which I absolutely love. So here's Earth Fire. As children, we had washed your stories off in the river because we didn't know what else to do. We did it the same way you hid them under the pillow every night, after we were asleep, tucking your hand in first, softly, and then just the act of letting go. We were told that you'd be the one to never leave. And then, if you keep looking, the dead don't leave. So once we had kissed your name on the surface of water, we left you there. We'll think of you later, occasionally. Like that night, once the fire was out, we had wanted to take you back home, your ashes, implying just about everything: life, loss, love. After you, we had wandered until dawn, hoping there'd be no sun. Today, we are in need of a story again, perhaps one in which there are 3 kind men and nothing evil happens. Perhaps your stories will be sad anyway now. Perhaps we should have looked back. For Grandma, thank you.
Hi, this is a poem I wrote at the start of lockdown, and it's about reclaiming your own inner light, so it's called Firefly. Just like a firefly, cradling the light, I drew closer to yours, but in the distance, I remembered I have my own. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Michelangeli, and I'm going to be reading a poem I wrote a few years ago called I hope you enjoy it. I am the dust you remove with your fingertips, disintegrating under your thumb. I am in the immediate surroundings, forgotten as you gaze towards the lawless sky. I am the view you see between 2 trains passing each other, sudden, jolting, fragmented. I am a dry heave. I am a plastic bag with nothing left in it to show for last night's hedonism. I am a smile that never quite reaches the eyes, no matter how hard you want it to. I am the high-pitched head rush that consumes you after hearing bad news. I am the gap between where you are and where you want to be. I want you to fall.
1 year older. She has high cheekbones and rose-dusk cheeks. She is screenwriting and then moving pictures on big screens. She has mint-colored cupboards and flourishing houseplants. She is Clarice Lispector reincarnate, or maybe she hopes to be, and she has a head so full of thoughts she cannot see. She has poetry pinned on corkboards. She is a crier when reading The Kite Runner. She read for 10 pages, has so much love for her mother. In the depths of lush woods, she is the river rapids, and she is the calm sways of ocean waves. She is dried flowers and Audre Lorde's shadow, following legend's footsteps. She's the panicked, oh, for God's sake, leaving the lips of too many, and she is 1 year older. She is all the minutes and the seconds, time itself, if you ask me. She has her life in order and steps forward with confidence. She is mint chocolate ice cream, spicy and sweet like the summer heat. She is not a gun nor a crossbow. She draws no blood. Instead, she draws stages for European theater. She is purple with the laughter of flower petals. She was playwriting. She is poetry. She is all the big questions and more than what she lets you see. She is 1 year older. And all the things I cannot be.
Poem number 11, This Being Years Before the Ark, by Archie Hamerton. This first flood, being years before the ark, astonished us. We forgot how to move as water filled the basement that as children we'd imagined a catacomb. This, being years before the ark, came so sudden that we did not think to save photo albums turned to pulp by water as green as the air on midwinter mornings. This, being years before the ark, found us piled into Father's car, driving to higher ground. Past the Donner Party, the Canterbury Pilgrims, past the car of teenagers en route to Lover's Lane, driving high until the road ran out. This first lesson, our first unlearnt calamity, felt profound and great. The chalk sky like the inside of a stove with its grey and celibate cold. In the back bench seat we were mute as inanimate things, whilst Father spoke reassurances in the lyric firmness of his voice. We sat silent, stock still, and played at being peat mummies preserved by kinder waters. And poem number 12, Mireia Arape, Fateful Love, by Georgia Cuthbertson. The strings of the lyre make your fingers bleed like forcing art from barbed wire. Music is made from bloodstains, from tiny open wounds, and a tune sings from the ghosts of hell. In you, from you, the song of sorrow wraps itself around the trees, rising like vines towards the sky, while beneath you, the shadows of antiquity step and turn and succumb in this dance of eternity. Outwardly, you sit beneath a tree, but your pulse, your heartbeat, it's in time with them. And as you play the lyre, pain in every beat, you grieve. If you were Orpheus on the ascent from the underworld, if you were brazened by fateful love, would you turn back? It's never been a question of looking. See, children do not know the difference between permanent and temporary, and maybe even when we grow, that fear of absence remains. Right now, we are searching for something in the shadow, but even still, we sit beneath that tree. Our fingers bleed. That grief, that pain feels real. So, like Orpheus, are you mourning a memory? Can anything then be loved if it cannot be seen?
Thank you to all those who read your poems, both here and on the screen, and to our team. Now we come to the the prize giving for this competition, and I'm delighted to introduce our judge, Phoebus Stoop, from Somerset. She's a former Foyle's young poet. Her first poetry book, Gin and Tonic, this is quite a good way to start, I think, was shortlisted for the Michael Marks Prize, and she's been awarded the Eric Gregory Award and the Geoffrey Dermer Prize. Her first full-length collection, Platinum Blonde, was published by Blood X last year, 2020. She's put her experience and tips on how to get published in the most helpful Young Poets network on the website, which I recommend anybody who's interested to find and look at. We welcome Phoebe.
Hello. Before we get into talking about the top three, I want to take a moment to say thank you to the poets. And I give you permission to call yourselves poets, because I know that sometimes people don't want to do that. And the poems on the shortlist were exciting, heartfelt, bold, and meticulous, and it was very difficult to pick three out of the bunch. And I wanted to say thank you because not only have you done something great, which is to write a good poem, but you also entrusted me with it, and that is an enormous privilege for me, so thank you very much. Right. So the third prize poem that I chose was a careful and sympathetic exploration of the Greek myth of Icarus, teased out through powerful and vivid imagery. I was impressed by the mastery of language and by how the emotions of the poem were controlled. Grief gives way to memory, which gives way to guilt, and lines such as "slowly you learn the cartography of loss" will stay with you long after you finish this poem. So that's Sarah Ang for After the Fall, who is not here, unfortunately. But there we go. And the second prize poem is a deceptively simple and beautifully crafted poem. So much is conveyed over just 5 short lines. I was struck by the precise working out of a single image. It takes a mature writer to make the choice to keep a poem short and uncomplicated, and this choice has more than paid off. I've been thinking about it ever since, and that's for Firefly by Cheyenne McCreed. The first prize poem that I chose was a moving portrait of grief. Not a single word is wasted in this portrayal of a family dealing with loss. I was struck by the poet's distinctive voice and the arresting mix of abstract and concrete imagery, demonstrated in lines such as, "We'd kiss your name on the surface of the water." The poem is musical and lilting, but the structure is refined. Even the placement of the words on the page is unusual. And that first prize poem was Earth Fire by Jayant Kashyap. We'll have to pass those on, but thank you very much for sending in your poems.
That's the end of the poetry competition for the young poets. Thank you very much, Phoebe, for your work judging that and your perceptive comments on the winners. And thank you, all the poets who put in poems for this, 100 of you, and well done and congratulations those of you who came away with prizes. We hope that we'll have more entries from you all next year, and we look forward to that then. We now take a break, and we resume just before 3 o'clock, if we may, for the open poetry competition. And I hope that all of you here will be able to stay and listen to that. There are some lovely poems to be read. Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to you all. We come to the open poetry competition now. For those of you who weren't here for the last session, there are a couple of housekeeping notes very briefly. Please could you turn phones off because it spoils the reading of poems. In an emergency, please remain in your seats and the stewards will show you the best way out. When in the interval after this, it's asked that you should wear masks, please, when you're walking around in the foyer and outside the auditorium here. Thank you. So we come to our open poetry competition. What we're going to do is have the reading of all the poems, and then we will have a break, probably about 4 o'clock, and then come back in for the prize giving for the open poetry competition, and then for the short story and the books for children prize as well. So we have about a 15-minute break at about 4 o'clock when you can get refreshments outside and so on. Once again, we thank Mary and Jørn Nielsen for sponsoring the Hilly Cansdale, the local prize in this competition. And as before, we're going to ask the poets who are here to come up in the order of the booklet that they're in, without introduction, and please, because of the timing, there's a lot of poems to read, no applause in between each poem, but please applause, of course, at the end of the readings. Thanks to our technical team, some of the poets who are not here in person are able to be here on the video, and they will come up in turn as the numbered poems are read through in the books. And for the remainder, our reading team of Pamela and Neil and Jenny will take turns to read various poems. There are 1 or 2 places where there are 2 poems in the short list written by one person, and in that case they will be read together probably rather than in the numerical order. So you'll see that as it comes along. So without more ado, the readings, please.
Hello everyone, my name's Hélène, and I'm going to read you an alembic on the threshold. I sing as your body shuts down, watch the doors of your mind fly off their hinges, a white sun pulsing through your skin and eyes into the room, your chest an alembic, gathering you with each breath you suck in. I witness your birth as you die, as you suck in your last breath, elated, finally fully alive, and you don't expire but keep hold of the breath and take wing as I gaze into your brilliant face on the bed, not knowing you've left, mesmerized.
It's poem number 14, Aura, by Mark Totterdale. He climbs the fence, just grazing one thin wrist against a metal spike. He's trespassing on railway land. The tangled bank is strewn with all the bright detritus of our sins. Bottles in brittle polythene, split tattered bags and polystyrene boxes, still spotted with the stinking grease of lamb. Defying brambles, he picks up the pieces and piles them in a heap, then lights a match. Stuff shrinks and crackles, bubbles down like flesh. He's haloed by the dark and bitter smoke, surrounded by his aura of dioxins. He breathes them in and smiles. He cannot know that downwind they are entering us all.
Hello, my name is Samuel Prince, and this poem is called Breckland Flint. If my dad was ever hunter-gatherer, it was when he returned from Norfolk to the north and shook out samples of Breckland Flint from his suitcase slips. Such snapshots defy erasure. My first feel, blackly smooth as eels or rooks, the clicks as they rub together, redolent of snooker balls, the barbarity of the stone shapes, disfigured trapezoids, lopsided rhombuses, some bit similar in outline to malformed beaks, lugers, nachos, or with the paperweight girth of hooves of a bygone beast. You find me bowed prayerfully over a mosaic of flints I've taken to collecting. Just as the earth bequeathed us these shatterings, these flakes, these rinds, flint with pestled heft or thin as sucked sharp glacier mints, so I preserve the legacy, channeling my inner Iceni tribesman, perennially observant for pieces expectorated from biscuity soil, meshed in trench and marl pit, flint that in a harsher age would stud a church tower or wall, that might have been prized from a mine shaft with an antler pick, then knapped to a knobbly spearhead, a conical tool inhumed in a barrow with a body after an unseemly ceremony. Son, see these chalky veins, strata marks, lysergic streaks, prehistory wailing, Cretaceous transmissions, and what they're trying to tell us is if you know the skill with flint strike on steel, there's a fire to make, foster and grow. Promise me its warmth will outlast the night. Thank you.
Number 16, Dear Natalie, by Angela Howarth Martineau.
She's here. She's here.
Oh, great. Hello.
Come up, do please.
Do come up.
Typos and misunderstandings. Hello, I am Angela, and this poem has a little introduction because it bounces off a poem of Natalie Diaz. She says, Akamakov is the name of our people, given to us by our Creator, who loosed the river from the earth and built it into our living bodies. I mean river as a verb. So this is a letter. Dear Natalie, I envy you, your rivering. My people were not born into or out of the flow of water. We were made from a pinch of earth, and it has been dust to dust, ashes to ashes ever since. There was a breath of God, I am told, a tree of life, a river in the garden, that was lost to the wanting, always separating to name, to capture in nouns. Which is why I have envy and why I am ashamed of my people, erasing your people, when what we really need is your belonging. So I am still here, wanting your rivering, wanting to enliven all my nouns into being verbs. I want to know myself rivering, opening out, and if I were rivering, I would be opening out into an estuary by now, broadening, shallowing over my mudding, calming under the skying of the night, sifting through my silting for offerings, worthy of merging with tiding of seas, wombing of oceans, warming, rising into clouding, raining down to unthirst all of our parched dust.
Distant Guns, 17, by Catherine Laycock. I know this place, old sundial hid in ferns, on cloudy windless days no time to tell, and spore of countless ages now returns, to root itself in this damp, shady dell. No shadow falls, nor bird calls, though a leaf trembles on a wave of air from distant guns. I knew this place. Ploughed earth, like shadow falls, and radiates furrows from a distant tree. A still white sky with still white sun enthralls the chalky landscape. There is naught to see. Now just a glint of sharp, dark flint, yet a leaf trembles on a wave of air from distant guns. We will know this place, the highest rounded hill, the silent hill fort scarred with pits of flint, where buzzards circle for their kill, above the ploughed fields, which reveal no hint that here we dwell on Martinsell, while a leaf trembles on a wave of air from distant guns.
I'm talking to you from the beautiful island of Iona. My poem is called Epiphyte. Attached to a fertile ecology of advantage, she extracts nourishment from air and water, the debris of validation that adheres to her. Her foliage is structured to reflect both heat and light. Her flowers exude a heady scent, concealing lack of substance. She's waiting to be exposed as an imposter. She does no harm, bedded into an existing ecosystem, even provides a welcome habitat for other organisms. But she knows her purchase is precarious. One brush from the beating wing of mischance might be enough to bring her down.
Number 19, Fossils, by Felicity Connie. Pieces of the past float in and out of view, captured moments, etched in time. The story, once full of life, now fossilized, frozen in a retelling. Deep furrows in a well-worn floor, destined to be repeated without relent. Fragments of colour, cerulean blue, tinged with burnt umber, drift to the surface, vivid as the moment they were captured. A small tender hand, auburn tresses, whipped by the wind. A stone carpet bordered by greenery, golden rays caressing the sun. On their own, merely pieces of fancy, buried, echoes of what once was. And yet, in their collective call, they hint at cherished moments from a bygone era.
Frost on cobwebs. Early morning, frost-bound ropes link and lace ridges and valleys of my kitchen roof. Miniature mountaineers have climbed and spun their intricate cat's cradles, while I lay blanketed, dreaming of 7-league boots, hillsides crossed in single leaps, miles travelled, cloud shadows racing over rippling grass, or ploughed fields' February icy folds. my father's hand holding mine, my father crouched, myopic, specs on top of his head. On his knee, an open-spread Bartholomew's, a world in small, canvas-backed. A finger, pilgrim, tracing coastlines, high peaks, best routes, expeditions to come, voyages done.
Hello, I'm Stella Vody. I grew up in Abergavenny, but I'm speaking to you from Lake Erie in Canada. In a moment, I'll read you a poem, but first, I've got a question for you. Do you remember the kind of insult you get in the playground? Kids would come up and they'd say, "Oh, your mother wears army boots." Well, something like that happened to me right at the start of COVID-19. A biologist said, "Your mum's a germ." Well, I just looked at him. But then he went on to tell me, that's how we got here. A coupling of two germs. Long, long ago, there was a great big change. Two single-celled organisms came together and complex life began. Well, the story stayed with me. So what he was saying was not just my mum, but all of our mothers were from this germ. Here's the poem. It starts with a quote from G.M. Hopkins. Wild air, world-mothering air. When the virus comes, a Welsh friend says, "Don't fret yourself." He tells me simply how life began. As I fall asleep, the words unfurl themselves beyond science, beyond dream, into a tale from far inside my body, inside all of us. In a small, spin-lulled, sun-bathed bay of the infant earth, a billion shapes ago, an organelle, single cell, self-playing her aeons away, spins a rhythm, finds a dance, so womb gentle, the barcarolle flows upward into a bacterial life sea. More vacillations, oscillations, millennia rock by, send her knowing further, until Kama Sutral, she bends, extends, combines, enclasps, no cyanobacteria can resist. He's been floating, empty-headed, vague as algae, beneath the vacant sky, surprises himself. Now, into chloroplasts, multiples, a shared impulse toward plant, stem, gender, slenderness. She, still swathed and seldom still, masters, mistresses, nothing. She learns length and the surrender of strands beyond herself. Tidal, tireless, she sends her science, scintillant, down the ages, until she split-second startles by shooting up and over onto land, firm-footing it, warrior queening, letting slip a further age, oxygen-drunk, where her childbed looms into giants. Dragonflies wider than albatross wings, green tyrants taller than Trump towers. And then a quirky distilling of blood from green to red, meaning us. she's the perfect parent, drops Homo sapiens into the life soup. Our presence casual as breeze, set free, as long as we remember her wild world mothering. Learn to land lightly, find her in ourselves as the perfect guest, the ideal life model, casual as breeze, or how the Welsh sun ripples through leaves, never here for long, never to return in quite the same way.
Good.
Hello, my name is Maggie, and I'm reading you two poems. The first one is called Girl in a Landscape. You probably know the kind of painting I mean. A lovely young face whose great eyes shine out against the gentle melancholy of the hills behind her and make irresistible a comparison between sky and skin, between eyes and the flashing screen of water just there behind her shoulder. Loch Ioma, named for the girl who drowned in it, or so they say, and no doubt the young woman in the picture knows the story, which would explain that half-told smile hovering between sadness and some happy secret, perfect image of the Irish colleen, who is, of course, never quite what she seems. Nearly everyone who meets my granddaughter is reminded of those old portraits, so like in colouring and features, yet with so little Irish in her blood. Besides, she, half faun, half Goth, is poised to spring free of that or any other cliché, throw off that tired old trope of the gentle maiden with no will of her own. I was there once, and then again I wasn't. 16-year-old hell, 16-year-old heaven. But what do I know? Never mind how familiar it feels when she hesitates, head turned, mouth earlier daubed in rose, her great eyes, this is the important part, fixed on the kind of self-made horizon I never saw or ever dared to aim for. Her heart skeptical, her mind uncensored, even if her lips, as yet, are closed. Delicate, tender, sweet girl, closer to this world than I am, instincts fine-tuned to her own life. And that slight droop of the head, oh, that has nothing to do with diffidence, but rather her complicity in a whole new world, flashing on the tiny screen forever in her hand, inspiring, directing, connecting her as she goes racing through the never-present present, humming with elsewhere. And the second one is called Pomegranate. This is the fruit I remember, not just the fruit, but the tree, my childhood favourite, with the furnace-red flare of its flowers that cool and then, drained of their colour, mix grit with water to spawn pink jewels, drops of blood packed tight inside their protective, leathery carapace, whose blush gives away its cruel intention to split wide open, to expose the glistening gobs of flesh. Take nothing here for granted. The bitter pith, the gush of juice, the betrayal of Persephone, caught with the seeds in her mouth, that stain on her dress. Thank you.
In the morning. In the morning, and just before departing, the world, for consultation, comes to me, as one comes to a mirror, day just starting, upon the threshold of one's privacy, checks itself, wrangling its niceties, correcting here a line, there the quirk of some new garment, uncertain of its pleas, before it leaves to go about its work. And every morning I mistake my place, as mirrors do, whose use is shallowness, as windows depth, but both looked through to see. World only looks through mine for its own face, its own eye seeing, seen, through mine's recess. It's the consummation, mine, the vanity.
Number 24, July Carol by Lynn Caldwell. In the stifle of a July afternoon, with the steam of the iron hissing, rising around her like a cloud of glory, my grandma sings, Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht, the words stretching out like sheets, the note shining, a concert for one or no one. It is rare to hear her speak. She doesn't speak her mother tongue, but this day it rises gently out of the deep well of a faraway childhood of memory, memory of breath forming around her on frozen December nights, still but not holy. Maybe she feels the brightness within her, lifting like a balloon, weightless like air, the words effortless, elusive, the tune carrying it through years across countries, still floating, a mote of dust falling.
Good afternoon, I'm Peter Keeble from the London Borough of Harrow. Here's my poem, A Lynx. Standing by the wet roadside in the interminable flatness of this plain, there's a chain link fence runs alongside, disappears into the grasslands, disappears in both directions into the rain like a roadmaker's guide. It's the sort of place Cary Grant might wait unknowingly for the crop duster. No doubt some lonely old cowpoke on a broken down horse checks it once in a while, more in boredom than hope. Rusted metal loops hold hands with the rusted loop on each side, and so on, bracing together into the murk as far as the mind can tell. One thing, it seems, must always lead to another if it's going to work. It's then, as the clouds scud off and the light begins to shout, my ancient eye picks out here, there, and everywhere, dotted yellow and blue, the wild flowers of the prairie, feeding off ground down rocks, flashing just as when they first exploded, back when time was measured by tectonic clocks.
Hello, my name is Emily Jelinek. I'm going to read two poems. The first is March poem. March came and you drew breath. Curling inwards, you bore down to the darkening rabbit holes in your head, surrendered to its long, misted hours. Already life was unfurling in hesitant offerings of primroses pale as the sky, trails of blossom scattered through grass, pearled with dew. And it's hard to notice new light silvering the clouds, when you would take instead crows, those gunmetal thumbprints, blown about like last year's leaves as a bleak sign, or birds from their wingless songposts, trilling wartime broadcasts in perfect melodic percussion as just noise. Listen. strain your ear to this gentle pulse, to the quiet beat of the singing earth. Hush, the babes are asleep in mossy beds soft as mouse ears. Woodpecker is carving his cradle in oak. Toad has emerged from his hollow, copper eyes wide as pennies. Then, when you're least expecting it, a chink of sunlight, a cut of brawling swallows, and daffodils at last. The Big Bang Theory state that the branches of the oak are still bare, though the blackthorn is fading and April ends at midnight. A single point of nothingness, also known as the singularity, lies within every closed bud, so compact it has no dimension. Suddenly, and no one quite knows why, a stream of mist pours over marshland where a swan guards her universe-shaped eggs, and the silvered pilgrimage of a snail lights up new leaves. Tune into that weird static between stations, the fine-grained detail, the moment our future was flung out across the void. Thank you.
I'll read 27 by Nicolette Golding. Minor. That Friday in July, the midwife quick-parcelled me bloody in a blanket. 5 days until they'd show me to my mother. Tuesday, father cradled me in. "Show me," she wailed. He revealed my splendid night pelt, extra thumb, star nose. She kissed them, weeping. First week of October, they filled my wheelbarrow with earth, dimmed lights, delighting at my squeals in the tender dark, my first dig. By my 3rd birthday, I was abroad in neighbours' gardens, breathing my own expired air, making little craters. Around midnight, father would wave, dancing with a torch for me to find him, his smell all smokeweed, his clogs drumming me home. Mother's sweet scent with me always, deeper than I could tunnel. The vibrations of her steps were nursery rhymes. Then I was gouged out for school. That first week, I learnt to make myself invisible. Cats, owls, and buzzards ruled the air. I masked my skillful hands and savage bite, learned the language, but kept quiet. Served 12 years of din and glare, snout flaking, whiskers twitching, sore eyes all itch and seep, seeing nothing, understanding nothing, missing mulch and earth and calm and clay.
Number 28, Notes on How to Pack by David Underdown. You may be leaving, but that van, those cases cannot take it all. So choose with care. The table where you sometimes see their faces from all those years ago. The rocking chair. You cannot take it all. So choose with care. The bed, of course, for its loving and grieving from all those years ago. The rocking chair, but not the leaky tap. And chuck the heavy sofa. Heaving the bed downstairs, keep it for loving and grieving. That corner window, leave it with the creaking stair, the leaky tap, and chuck the sofa, heaving at the stink from when those mice had babies there. That corner window, leave it with the creaking stair, pack all the books, although you know the mice have nibbled some. Who knows where you'll store the milk jugs and that vase of the green glow? But pack all the books, although you know you'll never find the day to read Ivan Denisovich. Bring the milk jugs and that vase with the green glow, but leave behind the year when she fell sick. You'll never find the day to read Ivan Denisovich. Oh, for God's sake, leave the strimmer. And leave behind the year when she fell sick. Oh, the piano is a shame, but take the sea, its shimmer. For God's sake, leave the strimmer. No laughing matter to shed the best of all your days. The piano is a shame, but take the sea, its shimmer. Past and future travel separate ways. No laughing matter to shed the best of all your days. But you're leaving with the van and all those cases. Past and future travel separate ways. So take the table where you sometimes see their faces.
Number 29, On Loch Rig by Arthur W. Allen. Our path is a watercourse, the pearl grey colour of pear. An autumn lake is drubbing the fells, watering the ancient Britain under the hill, under harebell and bristling rest harrow. What has fallen without ending lifts suddenly away. Fugitive streams vanish like snakes into the moorland. Rain and people rest under the same quilt. Hidden in the wind, like bird song on the mountain, we climb, bright emptiness, stepping over lost rivers, their tails and their long cascades disappear between the terrier's paws, washing unseen fossils on their way down to where the earth remembers a time before all flowers.
Hi, I'm Nick, and this is called Perfect Church. Some days I reincarnate you, the long dead, tethered to this place by the dial of the bell tower roof. I imagine you walking amongst the grass that grapples old headstones, or the dry pathways. Your steps echo like the spatter of heavy rain. I am tongue-tied by a tumult of words. This should be a kind place, but we are detached, like the winding road that separates church from yard. Along its incline, perspective always gathers to a blind point. And really, what would I say? I could tell you of the children, perhaps, how this one or that had done well, their loves and ambitions. But I feel you would be listening to the sky. Our words would meander like dust in a shaft of sun, never meeting, but falling like sediment, inexorable, a fine film burying an age gone by. There is a sturdy pathos in the names marked out in sunlit lichen. Time gives subtle kicks. My memories degrade like rust, so I look for you amongst the flocks of flowers left by the lost and the half-kept borders. It is remarkable what the eye believes. A glimpse of you would help me through this. Better still, if you'd sit with me and listen to the blackbird in the undergrowth, shaking melancholy off the leaves.
This poem is dedicated to the memory of my brother Wesley. safari into the rift. The matatu rattles and the rift grows below us. Kipkelian, Chemelel, Kisumu. The steep road is a neck that wears its names. Kayega, Shimyalu, like a tribal necklace spun all along its volcanic collarbone. Rift Valley floor and the tribal fires burn. The smoke rises like a ransom. The nightjar's cries are a cutthroat. A drum beats within me. It quickens to the story of a Luo boy crossing a Kikuyu river, following the dirty gold of a lion, dragging its prey, a Kikuyu boy, to the acacia's thorny shade. Footing his way over Kikuyu dust, the Luo boy creeps. His spear sings, and a lion slips from off his oppressor's back. The drumbeat slows. From home, the names bark like a stray. Ocker, Clocker, Ochnacloy, like rabid dogs, they roam and foam up in my memory. Listurt, Balagoli, Moigashel, and I turn my ear so the Swahili will curdle away the Irish burr of my tribesmen's bitter tongues. The Balagoli roads ripple like flags. Tribal shadows flit behind barbed wire smiles. Neighbours wave with eyes cast down. The orange drum's tempo comes. But my father is running over fields. He hurdles his neighbour's boundary wall to help pull the lamb from the flax down. Together their volcanic fingers dip in the redded flax, feeling for the innocence sunk far beneath the rotting fibres of this place. Their arms praise upwards, a baptism occurs. The lamb trembles in their joint embrace, and oppression slips away like a lion from their backs.
Hi, I'm Chris. Still some way to go, Mother Rosa. Black lives to any human heart must matter, though there are those whose word and deed deny the right to live free and not die in a gutter. Hate is too leaden to last love out. It flatters to survive, taints the truth and spreads the lie that black lives to any human heart don't matter. Knee-jerk cops and guns, the dreams they shatter, bring the law no glory, only the question why can't I live free and not die in a gutter? Someone dreamed of brotherhood one high summer of hope. Yet still the people march and cry. Black lives to any human heart should matter. Black deaths, so many. The prayers the people utter have gone unanswered. Who can still decry the right to live free and not die in a gutter? Instead of searching for hell's high fortress to batter, let loose these words and make them fly. Black lives to every human heart must matter, and so the right to live free and not die in a gutter. Thank you.
The glistening. Easy on this green and early morning to notice the pulse of blackbird and self. All is nuance and suggestion after weeks of blue emptiness, where we hovered between leaf's edge and the perilous ditch. Today we are impressionists, carrying our easels into the bright, full air. I shall hold fast to the tint of you, against the slow white glide of melancholy, that settled invader who would tumble the two of us down and bruise. First, let's open the gate and follow the sun, shall we? We could paint it ourselves if it came to it, a yellow like no other, so brilliant it hurts. Or we could stay all day on the lawn, cushion and dreamy, and later sieve the dust of twilight until it glows like seed pearls scattering. There are buds in this garden, rain and wet grass. These are for now. Let's relish the glistening, the new and silky shine of all of it.
The Moth by Julie Shackman. A beige kite flicking towards the bulb, travelling with intent, skirting the night air, oblivious to the cracked crockery of the moon. Zinging in a crazed display, fluttering its velvet body, shrugging off the shackles of the day, desperate to sate itself in the lemon hollow. Landing with the faintest chime and aeronautical feet, ghostly compared to the butterfly, the silhouette of blandness, smudged, yet just as graceful, a nimble pirouette around the seductive glow. Eager to please, seeking refuge in its optimism, before the sun fingers through the window, sending him into a glazed state, waiting for the dark to spill its dangerous ink again.
Hello, I'm Carrie Gillespie. The shadow butterfly. It's mid-morning and I should be working. Instead, I am curled up like a cat, watching a wood pigeon through the window. She is back and forth at her nest building, twigs in the corner of her beak, like a wurzel with a stalk of wheat. Busy fool. She puts my idleness to shame. Inside, in the milk cartons all along the sill, rows of seedlings arch like the corps de ballet, tilting their faces up towards the sun. They are grateful, as I am, for the first heat of the year. And then the shadow butterfly makes her appearance. Caught in my peripheral vision, a flicker of darkness, she flits about the shadow net that holds me. I open my white hand, palm up, and she settles upon it. I don't look round. This is enough.
Hi, this is The Sum of Its Parts by David Evans. Mosaics are planned, cutters cut, and the artist's accounted squares pile up, potted in uniform colour. Just enough tiles to reveal the commission, start to end, the aim known, sketched out. Tiles form as I walk. I'm unconsciously collecting them. Wool along the wire, early stars of blackthorn, snowdrops spattering clumps of meadow foxtail, leaf mould places, light finding root bases where ivy knots and crosses. Smouldering breath from calls across meadows and grunts bunkered in thickets, fossil hoof prints frosted around the water trough, and make-do blue barrel feeders, the type halved, glazed with ice and varicosed with straw. Rusty stalks of last year's docks pegging out a fallow field, cabals of wild narcissus in the high banks of low hedges, orange as yolks, yellow as chicks, hydrangea heads, plectrum petals faded to parcel paper, agapanthus stalks withered and bleached, starburst bone hands etched in hell. In February you would visit, spend a few days, never a week, and rarely sightsee. You were here for company, food, wine, and the sport of spinning dreams. What worlds you planned, shielding your smokes as if it were raining. Schemes that needed a longer lifetime. The snow that is forecast will soon be leaving France. It falls some years and rarely lingers.
Time to Heal, in memory of Dr. Arthur Brock, Wilfrid Owen's doctor at Craig Lockhart Hospital, Edinburgh. Some nights their words seep through my dreams, night terrors that drip with slaughter, men caught on snarls of wire, noiseless dead in the thick darkness. These men have become like the fragments of their minds. I coax them to share what they have witnessed in daylight, to help them banish phantoms that stalk their sleep. Owen often walks with Sassoon down the sloping lawns. He tells me he is the dark star in Sassoon's orbit. I note a growing tenderness between them. I think of our first meeting, the loose uniform, pallid skin, grey as smoked tallow wax, the spring-loaded startle at the rattle of a window, the tremor clattering his teacup. Even his stammer settles when he reads out his poems, as if it were holding back horrors he could only express on the page. Sassoon thinks he shows great promise. I wake early thinking of my patients. Mist creeps over the meadow, wraps slate rooftops. The Firth of Forth shines a ribbon of light, as if nothing has changed.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandra Chambers. Waiting for the Sumitomo Bank to open. That day, you remembered to feed the stray cat, scatter crumbs for garden birds, kiss your wife's photo good morning before heading to the city. Summer sun crosses a clear sky. Your seated shadow remains still. Tired, unsteady legs, forever resting. Walking stick in hand, forever waiting. Image etched into the bank's stone steps. Scorched by sudden obscene blast. Frail body, fading memory. Immortalized in hellfire's cataclysmic flash. Love, care, culture, busyness blown into oblivion. 100,000 mornings. Thank you.
That concludes the readings. Our thanks to the poets who read and videos their poems. Some beautiful work there, which I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you also to our team of readers who read the remaining poems. We'll now take a break and come back in 15 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you, Jenny.
Can I just make a quick announcement?
Yes,
Is that
you
all
may.
right? At 6 o'clock, we have the wonderful Owen Hughes. Shears!
Do you want to go and sit down?
Oh, sit down. Yeah, sorry, I'm Jenny Smith. I'm the one that keeps sending you all these emails. I'll start again. We have the wonderful Owen Shears, who will be speaking at 6 o'clock. So if you can stay here for his talk, that would be simply wonderful. You carry on.
Thank you. She's just preempted entirely what I was going to say. So if you could be back, please, in 15 minutes in your seats here, when we will have the prize giving with Owen for the poems, and then the prize giving for the other two competitions, the short story with Sally Bailey and the books for children with Joanna Nadine. Thank you very much. Hello to you who are new, and welcome back those of you who were here for the earlier sessions. We now come to the prize givings for three of our competitions, the open poetry, the short story competition, and the books for children competition. And we're going to start with the open poetry. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our poetry judge of this year, Owen Shears. He's currently Professor of Creativity at Swansea University. Well, creativity is right in his case. He's a poet, author, playwright. He's won the Somerset Maugham and the Wilfred Owen Poetry Awards, written a major film poem on the NHS, is a novelist and a non-fiction author, playwright and screenplay writer. As you know, it's 6 o'clock this evening. He's giving a talk on some of his works and the film poem on the NHS. So you're all welcome to come to that at 6 o'clock in this hall. In short, Owen, although he looks quite young, is actually a polymath, and he most clearly is one. So he's even got a TV show on this evening, BBC One at 8:30, if you want to hear some more. So, Owen Shears.
Oh, thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to Wells for the wonderful invitation to judge this poetry competition. But most of all, just as Phoebe said, thank you to the poets. It's a genuine honour to be given the opportunity to read poems on a shortlist like this, to be entrusted with so many voices and so many stories, but also to be given the opportunity to, I suppose, take a soil sample through a certain moment of time, and it's a soil sample of memory and message and image in the poems that I was reading. And of course, being poems, it's not just a soil sample of their subjects. What was a real privilege, I felt, was that it wasn't just that you get to witness, so many voices in these poems on the page, but also all of the people within them, the people and the lives that these poems hold. This sort of shadow cast, I found myself thinking of it, of these people that you glimpse, be it on the railway sidings or in someone's memory, or a wife in a photograph, or the people who are addressed in the poem. So there was an extraordinary sort of hinterland that grew as I read through these poems. And of course, having sort of that many poems at once, it's also an invitation to travel, I found, to so many different places. And I found that if there was any shared territory in these poems, it was perhaps that concept of journey, I felt, sort of kept arising again and again. So journeys through memories, but also literal journeys as well, and journeys through time. And perhaps, unsurprisingly, quite often a sense of loss, or a negotiation with what is lost and what is held on to as well. So thank you to all of the poets. You made it a very, very hard job, as did the people who chose the shortlist. They made it such a hard job that I didn't do a very good job as a judge. Well, I don't know. That's up to you to decide. In that, as well as the first, second and third prizes, there are also 3 highly commended prizes as well. So that gives you some indication of how strong the field was, that there were additional poems outside of those first 3 places that I really felt should have some sort of note of achievement and acknowledgement. But to start with, let me check I've got these in the right order. To start with the third prize in the open poetry competition. This is a poem of journey, a journey taken through Flint, into history, into the north, and into a succession of father and son relationships. It's full of flinty, incredibly physical imagery. You feel yourself sort of sinking down through the strata. And I was particularly struck by this line: my first feel, blackly smooth as eels or rooks, the clicks as they rub together, a redolent of snooker balls. And so you'll know already that this poem, which also I felt moved through time in a particularly deft way, moving backwards and then forwards and then a sudden switch back at the end, to land on, I felt, a very powerful note of hope from the deep past, that concept of what happens when you strike flint and how a fire might outlast the night. So I've already given the game away with so much description of it, but the third prize goes to Samuel Prince for Breckland Flint. I don't think Samuel's here. Is it right? No? Okay, I'll go down there. He's on a video. Well done, Sam. So T.S. Eliot once said that all good poetry can communicate before it's understood. And if I'm honest, that was certainly my experience with this poem, a poem of struggle and comfort and exposure, a beautiful and a mysterious and yet somehow revelatory poem, I found, of depths and then depths again. It's an extraordinarily resonant work. I think it casts a long note. One of the things I do when I'm judging is I try to read sort of bundles of poems and then leave them for a few days. And it's interesting what stays, what kind of stays on the surface. And this poem certainly stayed with me. An extraordinarily earthy poem, a close poem that opens out, as I said, into a moment of much harder and somewhat brittle exposure before sort of returning to a remembering of those earlier stanzas, especially with the final line, a missing of mulch and earth and calm and clay. So the second prize goes to Nicolette Golding for her wonderful poem, Minor. I'm doing well on choosing people who are here, aren't I? That's good. So we now come to the first prize. I'm going to quote another poet. Sir Robert Frost once said that like a piece of ice on a hot stove, a poem should ride on its own melting. And I've always loved that idea of how a poem should ideally sort of naturally move and kind of sort of melt away as it also grows upon you. And this poem that has won the Open Poetry Competition, it certainly achieves that extraordinary naturalness of movement, but it does so, and it's a movement of idea and emotion at one and the same time. But it does so within the boundaries of the very popular but very difficult to master form of the pantoum. That echoing, returning and advancing form that uses a repetition of lines to invest and to reinvest, sometimes some very everyday phrases with meaning and with new meaning. It's a poem of loss and acceptance, of hidden and sort of part-gestured stories. And I found it as well as a poem which was incredibly skillful in how it mixed emotion, suggestion, humour and memory and pathos. Speaking, I felt, of lives ending but also lives that are starting again. For me, that perhaps what made it feel especially appropriate to this moment in time. It was a poem about what we leave but also what we take from life as we pass through it. And I've certainly taken this poem with me. I've thought about it many times since I first read it. And it is Notes on How to Pack by David Underdown. So congratulations, David. Who is also not here, but I wish he was here, because it was one of those lovely moments that I think as the poem was read, you could hear in the audience that people would laugh and then a following line would hit you here in the solar plexus. So, yeah, congratulations. I'm next going to go on to the local prize, which is another poem of journeys, of tiny, minute journeys and sort of great plans of great journeys, thoughts of great journeys, and a journey of memory. And it's a poem about fathers again, an ingenious movement of a poem from the close observation of cobwebs to these remembered walks and these cherished moments of a father with his finger pilgrim tracing the map. So the local poetry prize goes to Hilly Lonsdale, I think it says here. I hope I've got that right. No, it doesn't. That's who the local prize is named after, isn't it? It's Fiona Shillito for Frost on Cobwebs. Is that right? Also not here. No. Now, as I mentioned, I won't spend too much time on these, but I felt that there were 3 additional poems that I really wanted to acknowledge, because to write a poem, and all of these were poems. I should say that there's no such thing as bad poetry. I'm now quoting the poet Keith Douglas. He once said, there's no such thing as bad poetry. There's just poetry and not poetry. And all of this was poetry. But the first of the highly commended was a poem of place, I felt, in the truest sense, born of close observation and an immersion in a very specific landscape. Another evocative poem of a journey and of a land remembering somehow for us and with us, that lands again, and this is something that came up in quite a few poems, I felt, that landed on a note of inherited and somehow ancient wisdom. And so the highly commended poem is by Arthur Allen, and it's called On Loch Rig. It's not here. The next highly commended poem, another lesson from nature, a more fleeting and perhaps a gentle lesson, an epiphany born of idleness and observation that ends in a really intriguing sense of acceptance, not both of a knowledge one, but I think, or rather both of a knowledge one, but also an acceptance, it felt to me, of a given ignorance and an embracing of that ignorance. And that poem is The Shadow Butterfly by Carolyn Gillespie. Who is here? I mean, please do, you're here. So you
Thank you very much.
And the final highly commended poem was an incredibly evocative poem of memory, a memory that draws us deep into what Gerald Manley Hopkins would have called the inscape of a fruit, and also into the fleeting and timeless image of a myth with Persephone and that stain upon her dress. So you'll have guessed already that this is a poem written by Maggie Wadey, and it's called Pomegranate. Congratulations, Maggie. Thanks so much. I think that brings my duties to an end, but I hope you enjoy the rest of this and the rest of the festival. My name's Owen Hughes, and and hopefully I might see some of you later. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to all our winners and those whose poems appear on the shortlist. And very grateful thanks to Owen, who leads an incredibly busy life, as you can hear, and for his really encouraging and perceptive comments on the poems. It was fascinating to hear his analysis of those. So thank you very much, Owen. We now come to the short story competition, which is sponsored by Kilvercourt Design Village. And we should be welcoming Sally Bailey to speak to us to announce the 3 prize winners. But unfortunately, she's ill and is not able to be with us today. And so Jenny is going to stand in her place in a moment. Sally is a lecturer at English at Hertford, and she's teaches academic writing, literature, film, creative writing at Wadham College, and she's written widely in fiction and non-fiction. In fact, I think she's our second polymath of the afternoon, and we're very sorry that she's not here, and we wish her well to get well soon. Therefore, I will leave you with Jenny, who is going to take over her mantle.
Even though she isn't here and couldn't come, happily, she has made some very lovely comments. General comments, first of all, about the overall entries, and then comments about her prize winners. So she begins by saying, I commend all those who submitted stories for the Welsh Short Story Competition. It is a difficult thing to generate a moving and meaningful piece of prose in 1,000 to 2,000 words, to shape narrative momentum and to show your reader something really is at stake. Many of the entries showed they could hold a reader's emotional attention, and I think it is emotional attention and a well-shaped emotional life we ask any writer to create for us, because we find this shaping so hard to do for ourselves in real or daily life. So the first poem, I'm at it again, I apologise for this, short story. This is the third prize, and she says, I have awarded this piece third place, mostly for its sense of energy and voice and unadulterated isness. The piece is not as finely structured as the other two, but the voice of the speaker is so much itself and so apparent it is hard to ignore. This is the voice of a wafting spectra. I've never been one for materialising, though a nice bit of wafting never did no harm, which is a quote from her story. The speaker does indeed waft through this rather Dickensian artisan-dwelling tenement-style lodging, but it is the voice that holds the piece together, not events. And in that sense, it's closer to an extract from a play or a novel. However, I commend the writer's ability to use voice, to power, and to conjure place and atmosphere. This is a charismatic piece of writing. And third prize goes to Beverly Byrne for Artisan Dwelling. And I know she isn't here, I'm afraid. Second place, she writes, this is a beautiful atmospheric story of a couple painfully separating. One, in fact, seems to throw the other out, but it is the character of June who leaves first, so we are told, but not before she throws out a lot of precious things, including a set of pearls. The image of the pearls organises the story's centre, and as a device, this holds the emotional life of the story to tight account. We can see the pearls in their pearlescence gleaming through the dark house, an image which reminds us of the effects of purposeless stuff accumulating inside a relationship. This clever narrative produces a hoarded sense of atmosphere or history which suddenly turns into a revenge drama of first a wife hurling things about and then her husband. In the end, it is Tom who leaves while June is left behind inside the house. But the writer is careful to deliberately muddle and lead us astray so that we understand, in the end, it is the relationship that is the pearly thing left behind, as each takes a turn playing the aggressive subject and the abandoned object. This is a very well-timed filmic piece of writing, and it was a very close run for first place. And unfortunately, the reader she is not here at the moment, and she is called Sarah Davies. Now, first prize. This is a highly crafted story showing real sensitivity to the delivery of imagery, images as forms of storytelling, and in this case, eggs, in what is a finely tuned account of a woman's private struggle with her own fertility. The story begins with an image of a silver line of carriages, of a morning commute into London, an image which stands in for the interrupted conversation between Katya, the story's protagonist, and her sister Evie, who is on the phone offering her some of her own eggs to her infertile sister. The imagery, the dialogue, the passing scenery spied from the train thread through the protagonist's consciousness as flashes of contemporary life lived as forms of resentment and loss. The humiliation of a sister receiving the offer of eggs from a sibling. The story unfolds through an awkwardly snatched conversation that flashes through a series of snapshots of sibling affection and rivalry until the carriage pulls into its London terminus. The writer skillfully employs the train stops and locations as punctuation marks in the mind of her protagonist, a device that skillfully produces more momentum and scenery, more space for reflection in what is very a sophisticated and elegantly managed piece of flash fiction. I have awarded the writer first place because the subject of the story is movingly conceived, and from the very first line, I felt dragged as a reader through the earpiece of that mobile phone and into the dark and looming spaces of a suburban London's western side. This is a story that is both moving and also really moves elegantly and with real restraint through family history, suburban geography, a landscape of loss and indebtedness. Bravo. And the name of the winner is Alice Fowler for Incident on the Line. And again, unfortunately, Alice is not here. We do, however, have a local winner. I'm afraid she isn't here either. And the local winners are chosen from people who have a postcode BA, BS, or TA. So this entry reflects an endearing sense of quietness and gentle observation, a domestic relationship and setting interrupted by unsettling news. The story doesn't quite have the dynamic turn or thrust of the three winners, but the writer has nicely observed place, time, and the intimate patter between a couple whose settled patterns of life are interrupted by outside events. A story need not have a dramatic event to be engaging, and that event can also come from dialogue and subtle twists and turns away from expected spoken responses. Humans often betray themselves through silence and small gesture, by patterns of conversation that take an unexpected turn towards a new language. This new language can provide the story with its dimensions, and the local winner for A Nice Cup of Tea is Caroline Rose. Thank you. I'll just leave all those there for you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny, for standing in and doing that for us. And we will pass, of course, our thanks to Sally Bailey for her most helpful and enlightening comments on those stories. And congratulations to our winners. We now come to the Books for Children competition, which is our last competition this afternoon. Oh, I should have said of the short stories that the winners will appear on our website. So we haven't got a booklet for them, but you will be able to read them by tuning into the website. When will that be up and running, do we know? Shortly. You can read what you like into Shortly, but it will be there before long. So now we come to the Books for Children composition. And that, of course, is different because you're talking about a whole book. The entrants have to provide a synopsis of the entire book and either the first 2 chapters or the first 20 pages. and it is on that they get judged. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you our judge, Joanna Nadine. She is the author of more than 80 books for children, teenagers, adults, and has been nominated and shortlisted for numerous prizes, including the Carnegie Medal and the Roald Dahl Prize. She's perhaps best known for her series Joe All Alone and Rachel Riley series. She was a special advisor and speechwriter to Tony Blair, and now is senior lecturer in creative writing at University of Bristol, including speech writing and editing. We seem to be absolutely full of polymaths this afternoon, and here is the third one, Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And thank you to Wales Literary Festival for asking me to do this. As Owen said, it's not just an honour to be asked to judge something like this, it's also a joy. It's always a joy to me to get to read new writers' work, which is why I do the job I do, working with students, new writers, emerging writers. But it was a joy to see these different ones coming in from so many places. The standard, like the other competitions, was incredibly high. This took several readings of the stories over and over to really pick which ones were going to win. Not just that, they were incredibly varied in their entries, as you can imagine when you're writing for children. So we had dystopian worlds in there, we had funny adventures, we had mysteries, we had all sorts of animals, all sorts of threat. That's, I guess, why I write for children. Those varied landscapes you get to explore. And it's why I read a lot of children's books as well. It's a chance to escape to so many places. It's a chance to lead different lives. And I mean, I have done a lot of things with my life, as you said, but none of them have been as exciting as the lives I've got to read about in children's books. And I think that's what you all do when you write for children. You offer escape and entertainment, yes, but you also offer glimpses of worlds that the readers might want to belong to. And you offer glimpses of people they might become when they grow up. You offer, above all, hope. We are, as children's writers, I really believe this, we are the hope hunters. In the sheer act of writing for children, and it's a responsible job, but it's a wonderful job as well. So all of you, whether you have won or not, and I know most of them aren't here today, I wish they were, so I could just keep urging them, just keep on doing it, keep on writing. So, on to the prizes. I wish, like Owen, I'd been given special dispensation to offer other rewards, but I was not. I stuck to the rules. I do like rules, as Monica says on Friends, they control the fun. The rule I didn't stick to was I misunderstood my instructions and I did not bring my notes with me, so I'm not going to be able to give detailed notes about the winners. I will, however, happily email feedback to them afterwards so that they can see why they were chosen. One of them I do remember distinctly, though, and you will realise why when I come to it. But first of all, so in third prize for the book for children is The Riddle of Stanbridge Hall by Kate Holness, who I am told is here. And now there is Tumbleweed, as we find out she isn't. No? Oh well. Well done, Kate. In second prize, I do distinctly remember this because of normally I don't look at titles because they will get changed by your editor, and so there's no point half the time in coming up with one. But the title of this is Girl Elephant War, and it really stood out to me, and the writing stood out. There was something it had a very classic feel to it, a tone. I felt like I was going back to The Secret Garden or something like that. But there was a contemporary touch to it as well. So second prize in the book for children goes to Chrissy Sturt, who is also not here. Okay, to the first prize. This one again, I distinctly remember. I have only twice, I think, read books in which the voice has struck me as much as this voice did. One with a book called The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, and the opening is his dog Manchie talking, telling the reader how much it needs a poo. The other time was with a novel called Bearmouth by Liz Hyder, which I believe went on to win the Branford Bows. It is an incredibly distinctive, standout, unusual voice. If you have read it, you'll understand what I mean. And if you haven't read it, I urge you to read it. And I urge you, if this one gets published, to read it as well. The voice in this is utterly like nothing I've read. It's discombobulating and engaging and strange. The first prize is for Children of the Scorch by Lou Hersey, who is here.
Thank you. This is really Marmite, this thing, you know, and I thought, like, well, thank you, Wells, for liking Marmite. That's really
I love Marmite, clearly. And there is one more prize, which is the local prize as well. And again, they are not here, but that goes to Marie Day for Escape from Nowhere. And as I've said, I'm so sorry for not bringing my notes with me, and I was frantically trying to find them on the internet, which doesn't work in here on my phone. But I will happily email feedback to those. Brilliant, thank you.
Many thanks, Joanna, for that, and for your so enthusiastic comments on the readers for the writers, which we hope will encourage more people to try that genre. That concludes our prize giving for the afternoon. It simply remains for me to thank the many people who have made this event possible. First, Wells Cathedral School for the use of this wonderful auditorium, and Chubb Bulliard, who each year have sponsored much of the programme. Thank you also to our list of shortlisters and our readers and the behind-the-scene helpers, the admin people, the stewards, the technical experts, and the people who did the videos, all of which come together to make, we hope, a good show for you. Above all, I want to thank a special thank you to Jenny Smith, who does the most enormous amount of work running all 4 of our competitions with cheerfulness and keeps us all more or less in order. So, Jenny, thank you very much. Finally, thank you to our judges and all the competitors, without whom, of course, nothing is possible. And to you, the audience, we're delighted to see you back in person, and though invisible, our audience worldwide on the website, and we hope that we will see many of you and hear from many of you again next year. Thank you very much.
Anything you can give to the festival will help children in local schools in lots of ways.
Please give what you can. Thank you.